Lord, we just want to be with you. We just want to be in your presence. He is a good God, church. He is a faithful God. And tonight, I want us to go to the book of Exodus. Exodus chapter 13 and 14. But I want us to start quickly just to talk about Moses and the children of Israel. And some of us who have gone through this book, we know about Moses, we know about the children of Israel. But tonight, I want us to be reminded of something that God is doing in our lives through His active word that is alive today. I want us to talk about this man called Moses. So Moses, if you go to Exodus chapter 3, Moses had an encounter with God. But before he had an encounter with God, Moses was busy tending to his father-in-law, Jethro. He was busy there, tending to the sheep as an ordinary man. And he had not planned. He did not even know that he was going to have an encounter. For him, it was just an ordinary day where he is just tending to the sheep. I want us just to quickly go there. It says, now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of the bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. And I'll just stop there. Ordinary day, going about his business. The angel came to him. And we all know he encountered the presence of God. So after that, if we go down and read, you realize that now God speaks to Moses. And now God commissions Moses to say, I want you to go to Egypt because I have a commission for you. But Moses, out of his ordinary space of where he was as an ordinary man, listen to the conversation that he had. He says to God, how do you choose me, such an ordinary man? I am just an ordinary man. Why would you choose me? Am I even worth to be the one who goes there to free the children of Israel because I am an ordinary man? You know, God is calling us to advance. And some of us, we look at ourselves and say, Lord, I am just an ordinary man. I don't know what to say. If you go down, you realize that Moses tries his last push, where he pushes back to God and says, Lord, but I can't speak. Still God says, I want you to go and free my people. What does God do? He brings Aaron and says, I will bring a man who will speak on your behalf. An ordinary man is sent to go and free the captives. So number 2, what was the mission? The mission was to go and free the children of Israel, because God had remembered that he had a covenant with Abraham, and the children of Israel had sat under slavery for more than 400 years, sitting under slavery. But because God is a promise maker who fulfills his promise, he goes and chooses this ordinary man. But the ordinary man does not believe that I will be able to be the one who's chosen to fill these shoes, because the ordinary man thought about his own abilities. The ordinary man looked at himself and said, I am just Moses. There are other people who are better than I. You see, church, similar to Moses, most of us who are here, we were wandering somewhere in the bush, tending to the sheep. But the faithful Father came for you while you were tending around for the sheep. And he called you from a lowly place. He called you from an ordinary place and said, I want you. You know, most of us, when we think about advance, we think about our capabilities before we think about the mandate. If you are writing down, church, write this. It's not about you. Church, we have made everything to be about us. It is never about the business of the Father. When God called Moses, he was not saying, Moses, can you give me the strategy? He was saying, I need an ordinary man who can be faithful, that I can send to deliver my people. Church, when God called Moses, it did not mean that God did not have a plan. When God calls you and I to advance, God already has the plan for us to implement. But Moses thought, what can I do on my own? You see, today we are here. We are here not because we had a great plan. We are here because he had a great plan. I want to show you something. Let's go to Exodus chapter 13, verse 17. Listen to this. It says, when Pharaoh let the people go. Remember how Pharaoh let the children of Israel go. He let the children of Israel go because God had a plan to do so. When the children of Israel left Egypt, it was not just a plan of sneaking out of Egypt. They walked freely because God had a greater plan than Pharaoh. So when they walked, they did not walk only at night or sneaked out, but they walked freely, and Pharaoh let them go. While Pharaoh knew that he had benefited for more than 400 years. He let them go. But listen to this. It says, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, although it was near. So church, you see, God had a plan to say, Moses, I want you to go in there, but again, when I am freeing my people, I am the one who will lead my people, because it is my plan. It is never about you. But we make it about us because we try to fit the plan in the plan of the Almighty. And listen to this. It says, for God said, let the people change their minds, lest the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. Because he knows the plan very well. He knows the hearts of the people like he knows my heart and your heart. He knew that he could have taken them through the route that was shorter, but God knew that when they see war, they will return back. But let me say this. Why did God allow them to go the longer route? Because God had a plan. It was never about them. You see, God knows every single detail of his plan. He knows the heart. He knows the thought. So his plan is for good for us. Listen to this. It says, but God led the people around by the way of the wilderness toward the Red Sea. And the people of Israel went up out of the land of Egypt, equipped for battle. Moses took the bonds of Joseph with him. And I'll skip quickly. And I'll go to verse 21 and says, and the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them along the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, that they may travel by day and night. When God calls you in his plan, he already has even the resources on how and when and why he wants you to take that route. That's why it was never about them. It was about God. Every single detail, it was so specific that God had prepared that I will lead them, and by day there will be this cloud, because he is a God of resources. When God calls you, he gives you the resources because it is about his plan. Some of us, we give excuses. I can't do this. God has never said, help me. He has the resources. It is not about you. It is about the plan that he has. And listen to this. And the Lord went before them. And I will quickly jump to verse 22. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night did not depart from before the people. Let's go to Jeremiah 29 verse 11. It says, for I know the plans I have for you. Who? You. For I know the plans I have for you. Who has the plan? Who has the master plan? It is God who has the master plan for you and me. That's why it is never about us. When he's calling us to advance, it means he has prepared a plan for us. He has literally calculated every single detail for us to follow. You know, the children of Israel did not need to make a plan to escape Egypt, because God had a plan for them. And as we sit here, I want us to understand that God has a plan for us, has a plan for us individually, has a plan for us as a community, has a plan for the nation and nations. Let's go to chapter 14. And this is how it reads. Wait, before we go there, let me just finish the scripture, Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. I know that most of the times we're thinking about good plans in terms of money, good plans in terms of resources that we can benefit. But let me say this, I want us to settle in these two words: hope and a future. Your hope is not in the past, neither is your future in the past. But God has prepared your hope as you move forward. He has every single detail planned for you, for your future. But let's see what happens in chapter 14, verse 1. He says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, tell the people of Israel to turn back and encamp in front of the Pi-Hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, in front of Baal-Zephon. You shall encamp facing it by the sea." I want us to really pay attention to this. Then God, remember, they are not leading themselves, but it is God now directing their path. Somehow God takes them into this journey, and somehow they find themselves in this place called Pi-Hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, in front of the Baal-Zephon, and camping. Listen to this word: facing it by where? The sea. And let me say this, the word Pi-Hahiroth in Jewish, it says the mouth of freedom, or mouth of water. Why did God lead the children of Israel to a place where he knew that this was called the mouth of water? And they were facing exactly this direction around this place where they encamped. But listen to what God does. Because it is about God, it was never about Moses. Listen to verse 3 from chapter 14. "For Pharaoh will say of the people of Israel, they are wandering in the land, and the wilderness has shut them in. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. And I will get glory over Pharaoh and all his host. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord." And they did so. So it is God who hardened the heart of Pharaoh. And when Pharaoh thought, "Oh, I have gotten them," now he is sending an army. But listen to this, God was allowing all these things to happen because he wanted his glory. This battle was not against the children of Israel, but God was demonstrating to say, "Look how powerful. You might have kept them 400 years, but when I want them to advance, they will advance. I would even harden your heart so that the children of Israel can advance." So there we see, they proceed. And God talks about this is, you see how God plays out the script. God already knows how the episodes are going to end. He says, when Pharaoh is hardened, Pharaoh then will come after them. But what happens there? When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, the mind of Pharaoh, and listen to this, you see how God makes a king to be foolish. The Bible, when you go back, it says, in chapter 13, verse 17, it says, when Pharaoh let the people go. Who let people go? It's Pharaoh. But the same king, Pharaoh, now says, they have fled now. You let them go, because the one that you are dealing with, he is greater than you, that he will make you foolish. When the sun is up, you will let his children go, because he has a greater plan. And listen to what he says in verse 6. So he made ready his chariot and took his army with him, and took 600 chosen chariots and all other chariots of Egypt with officers, all of them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh. Who hardened the heart of Pharaoh? It is God. Some of us, when we go in the journey and the journey gets tough, you say, where is God? He is still there, because it is his plan, not your plan. But when it gets harder, some of us, we say, no, I'm not going to take this. Let me alter this. Let me sit down for a moment and take a recess. By the time you take the recess, the enemy is pouncing on you as you take the recess in that moment, because we always think it is about us. Lord, it is so painful. I am so tired. Don't you know that He is God who has good plans, who knows all things that He wants for you? One battle, we give up. We start asking, where is God? The Egyptians pursued them. In verse 9, the Egyptians pursued them, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them and encamped at the sea. When Pharaoh drew near, the people of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they feared greatly. And the people of Israel cried out to the Lord. They say to Moses, it is because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness. Can you hear what happens here in verse 10? When the children of Israel, remember, they are encamped and looking at the sea. So when you look at the sea, you can't see the end of the sea. And when they think about what's coming for them, because remember, the children of Israel knew the army of Egypt. They knew the capabilities. So you see now, the Bible says they responded in great fear. So listen to this. Two things were happening at that moment. They were trapped in two circumstances. And when they looked at the sea, there was no door according to them. When they looked back, there was no door according to them. But the one who holds the plan knew there is a door. He put them right by the Red Sea, where it says, this is the mouth of the sea. You might not see the door, but God has blessed the door, because everything that is put in the earth belongs to Him. He knows the right door where to place you. If you go there, in that place called Piaorith, it says it's the mouth of the water. God could have directed them in any other place, but He put them where He knew that when He formed the world, He knew that when I called out on these waters, I knew where I put the entrance for my people, because He had the plan for them. And sometimes we make things to be about ourselves. Now, out of fear, they say, listen to this, and when they call on God, it's not like they were calling on God because they trusted Him. No, they called on God in tremble because they had doubt, they had no faith, because the next statement says, Moses, why didn't you leave us so that we can die in the graves of Egypt? You see now what the devil does. When you are trapped in between, the enemy makes you see slavery as a better place than for you to be the son in the kingdom. He will rip you of your inheritance, because he will show you and say, go and get a better burial. I don't know a slave who gets a better burial. I don't know what they were crying for. That was going to be a red carpet. That was going to be different by dying in the wilderness. But you see what the devil does. Because of fear, he captures your mind and takes you to slavery while you are the son and the daughter in his kingdom. After they were captured, listen to these statements, because they are responding in fear. What have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt? When they left, they rejoiced. Lord, you are a good God. You are so faithful. Some of us, we know when God does great things, we live and jump. Lord, you are a great God. You get payment, you are so excited. You get things going, you are so excited. The moment you have a challenge, you start asking, God, where are you? Because you are not trusting Him fully. You are not moving in His presence. So you are doubting his capabilities, and you are doubting that God has a good plan for you. When we ask God and say, where are you? We are basically saying to God, you don't have a great plan. I can do better than you. Because the one who formed you assures you that I have a great plan. Trust me. And listen to what happens there. Verse 12. It is not this what you said to you in Egypt. Leave us alone that we may serve the Egyptians. For it would be better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. You know, when you go in this walk and God calls us to advance, as we are advancing together, as we are going together, as we are taking ground along the journey, there will be those in the army that will say, you know what, when there is a giant that has come in front of us, when there is a mountain that has come to us, someone is going to say, I long suspected that this advance, when they started advance, I suspected that this thing, there is always that one person who just says, you know what, I knew it, but I never said it. But you know what, in my heart there was something that was just steering that there is going to be a mountain somewhere. So you see, they are garnering some support around Moses now. All of them, they are pointing. Remember, this is where you see that they were not trusting God, but now they were busy flooding. They called on God, but immediately they are accusing this message. You could have left us there. You could have let us serve the Egyptians. It was going to be better. But let me say this. There was a man who was an ordinary man, whom one day when he was walking, heading the ship of his father-in-law Jethro, he had an encounter and he saw the presence of God by himself. And listen to how he answers. He doesn't answer from a place of, I am not too sure what God is going to do. Listen to what he says. He says in verse 13, and Moses said to the people, fear not. Listen to that. Fear not. Stand firm. And listen to this word. Stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord. Listen to the words. He doesn't say, guys, let's just wait. He says to them, he says, look at what God is about to do now. Not tomorrow. He is telling them to say, fear not, stand firm. Oh, put on a big screen and see what is about to happen. Not tomorrow, right now. Why? Because he had encountered the presence of God. He knew that the one who sent me said, I will be with you. He knew that all this time when he was confronting Pharaoh, it was God instructing him. So he knew that he was there and present because it was his plan. It was never about him. We make it to be about ourselves. When we hit rock bottom, we try other plan B's. We don't look at the enemy. All the speakers who are sharing, you know, they talked about moving. Tabitha talked about moving out from this footstool and walking into where God has called you. When a situation comes, you don't refer people to bishops. You don't refer people to better people. You will know that from your ordinary place, when Christ found you, you have the authority. You stand and say, I fear not. I will stand because the enemy, you're about to experience something more than you can even imagine. And listen to what he says. He says, fear not, stand firm, and see the salvation of the Lord. which will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You have only be silent. Listen to these statements. He says, these Egyptians that you see now, you shall never see no more. That was before they were buried under the water. He was not just speaking, he was speaking according to the plan of the Almighty, because it was God giving him the words. He already spoke what is about to transpire. He says, you will not see them no more. Was Moses good enough to do that? No. But because he was obedient and following and trusting God and right in the plan of the Almighty, he was there. The Lord said to Moses, why do you cry to me? Tell the people of Israel to go forward. Listen to what God says. Sometimes we continue, Lord, break the chains. Lord, break the chains. Lord, I want to. It is according to your plan that you want to break the chains. It is not part of God's plan to break the chains at that moment. He is saying in that heat, take the steps, because it is never about you. I know as you take the steps, the plans that I have for you in the next move. But guess what? We doubt about the next move because we want to be sure according to our plan. Lord, are you sure that you're going to make a path? You are asking someone who created you, that are you sure that you're going to provide for me? You have forgotten that for you to even have the life to ask that question, it is God who has given you that life. When we are trapped between two situations, the children of Israel even cried for garlic. Honestly, who eats garlic and gets full? Who goes and sits on the table and prepares and say, you know, today I am eating garlic. And you take the fork and knife and say, today this garlic, you know, this piece, I will cut it this way. They cried for these things because they made everything to be about themselves. But church, it is never about us. God is calling us to advance for his glory. Listen to verse 19. Then the angel of God who was going before the host of Israel moved and went behind them. God always has a strategy. Where you think things are not happening, God will move the pieces and place them where he wants them to be, because it is never about you. Sometimes we ask, Lord, I really want to be sure that you are doing this. I really want to be sure that you are here. I always tell people that sometimes we walk here. When you sleep in the evening and put your head on the pillow, there is a time where you stop thinking. There is a time where you stop writing the reports. There is a time where you stop calculating any monies. There is a time where you stop watching over your kids. Who is watching you? It is the one who has the plan for you. It does not mean that the enemy is not fighting. There are battles, but he watches over us because he has got good plans for us. We make it to be about ourselves. May we just stand all together. In verse 21 and 26, it says, then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. So God commands Moses. 2 times Moses stretched the hand in that sea. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord drove. Who drove the sea? It is not Moses, but the one who had the plan knew that at the right space where he has placed them, when he asks them to do something, he will command things to happen. And he says, then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord drove the sea back by a strong east wind all night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the people of Israel went into the midst of the sea, dry ground, the waters being a wall to them on the right hand and on their left. We'll stop there. In verse 26 it says, then the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the sea, that the water may come back upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its normal course. When the morning appeared, as the Egyptians fled into it, the Lord threw the Egyptians into the midst of the sea. The water returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen of all the host of Pharaoh that had followed them into the sea. Not one of them remained. You remember what Moses said? You will never see any one of them. There was no path according to men. There was no way according to the children of Israel. But there was a way according to the one who created the sea. He knew that in no time they will walk in dry land. Church, let's just lift up our hands. Let's just lift up our hands, and I'll ask the worship just to sing the last song that we're singing.